Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. So this morning, we shall open up with the whole aspect of Haiti again, right? Because Haiti is in the news, and justifiably so, because they are going through a situation that we do not know how this will all play out, how this will end. So we have to make sure that we're following everything that is happening on the ground. I did also suggest that whatever happens in Haiti, whatever the developments are, these developments will be the standard form of US occupation and also the standard form of what these globalists want to achieve in the world. And we know by, you should know by now, that their major quest is for full spectrum dominance, and full spectrum dominance means that they control every sphere of your life, whether religious, political, economic, social, everything of your life, every sphere of your life will be controlled. And I should not have to tell you what happened 4 years ago, where you were told everything you needed to have done and how to do it and when to do it and why to do it. I mean, the why was not properly stated, but you were sent home when they wanted you to go home and you couldn't work and all of that stuff. You know what I'm talking about, right? And but you, because you're so obedient, you're obedient children, so you were able to do what the authorities wanted you to do. Now, in yesterday, was it yesterday's Guardian note? I think it might have been, let me see the date here on this article, but this is an article coming from the Guardian newspaper. Monday, March 18th, right? And it's the title of the piece from the Guardian, UK Guardian newspaper, US citizens flee Haiti on government chartered flight. And it says more than 30 Americans arrived in Miami from Caucasian as US urges citizens to leave as soon as possible amid gang violence. So the violence continues unabated. Now, the thing I wonder is the fact that the United States is actually, and Canada are actually, taking out, evacuating citizens, whether Canadian citizens or US citizens from Haiti, they're ensuring that they leave and that they do so immediately. It seems like something big is on the horizon. So it says here a charter flight carrying dozens of US citizens fleeing spiraling gang violence in Haiti landed on Sunday in Miami, State Department officials said. More than 30 US citizens were on the government chartered flight, officials said in a statement. It arrived in Miami's International Airport after the US Embassy in Port-au-Prince earlier this month urged US citizens to leave as soon as possible as chaos grips Haiti. And this is interesting here. One of the evacuees suggested here, Avlot Kwesa, who lives in Boston, traveled from the center of Haiti to board the charter flight after going to the country in February for what was supposed to be a week-long trip to visit his mother. It's just terrible, Kwesa told the Miami Herald of the nearby Caribbean nation. The suffering you can only imagine. So he's commenting that the suffering is unbearable, is unthinkable. Haiti is my homeland, and it's very stressful to see the homeland going through this act of violence, destruction, and they are our neighbors. Haiti's main airport in Port-au-Prince remains closed following gang attacks that have raged through the nation in recent weeks, pushing many people to the brink of famine. Government and aid agencies this weekend reported looting of aid supplies as the situation worsens. So here we're seeing that people are also going through famine, and this is happening in the Caribbean region, right? An island that sits on the same island with the Dominican Republic is going through famine and is going through unprecedented violence in its history. Something is amok here, something is amiss here, and we've got to reflect and try to grasp and try to piece together what is happening in this country. Now, one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, I'm wondering, could this be another Waco? Could Haiti become, on a grander scale, Waco, right? Waco in Texas, United States. Remember now that Waco was a community. Well, these people, well, Waco is a community in the United States, right? In Texas. But there were these people who were offshoots of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they thought that, in order to meet Christ, because Christ was coming soon according to their understanding of the prophecies, and they decided that they had to live separate from the world. Now, remember, now the Bible tells us that we should not live separate from the world. We should be in the world, but not of the world, because we have to live in the world. Christ lived in the world, and he went and he witnessed to mankind, right? He lived among sinners. One of the reasons why the Jews hated him so much, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, was the fact that he was always with sinners, always witnessing to them, trying to transform their character and their lives. And the Jews thought that they should be separate. So these separatist movement, the Waco people, right? It's not that they were different from the Jews, right? The Jews had a similar philosophy that they should be separate from the world and they were superior to the world and they should live and they should fence off their section of the world because they were superior to the other citizens of the world. And that is why people hated them, including now, right? Because the Romans hated the Jews with a passion, right? Because they had this sort of superior demeanor where they thought that they were God's people and they had rights to everything. And they were literally superior to other nations of the world. And the reigning empire of the time, the US Empire, hated them, not the US Empire, the Roman Empire rather, hated them with a passion, right? Now, the Waco people in the early part of the 1990s, they had separated themselves and an offshoot of the Seventh Adventist Church, as I suggested, and they were there, and their leader was this guy called David Koresh, and David Koresh, it is alleged, was a belonged to the cult. They were deemed to be a cult by the state, by the US state, that is. And it is alleged that David Koresh, their leader, had, he was practicing polygamy and also child abuse, right? Where the allegations were that he sometimes involved in sexual relationship with the children that were housed at in that particular, what should we call it now, community, religious community. Now, the fact of the matter is that the United States also suggested that he was also stockpiling weapons to protect himself from the onslaught of the state, right? Because, thought that he was, because of, his religious belief, that's David Score's religious belief, he and his members thought that the state would eventually attack them and they had to defend themselves. So they stockpiled, it's alleged, a lot of weapons, right? Now, what happened eventually is that because it seems that the state could not, change their mind, could not coerce them to remove from that and that sort of community and to, you know, um, re right. It was not able, they were not able to help them to become regular citizens, right? Or normal citizens. I mean, the fact of the matter is that whatever we want to say, the United States is a free country. And once there is no violence and, but even though we know that if the allegations were true of the fact that he was abusing sexually children, then of course the state has to be involved in that because that is something that is a violation of human rights, right? But the United States decided that the best way to have settled that matter was to go and bomb them in 1993 under the Clinton administration. And something was wrong with that because, there are people who were living in the community and they said that David Koresh used to go outside every day and he would run, he would do his jogging, right? And the US FBI could have one day, caught him. They could have arrested him and they could have taken him to trial. But instead, they decided that they were just going to bomb the place with all the children in that building, right? The United States fenced off the building and bombed them on US soil. And this happened there in 1993. And it is not Haiti now, this is on or was on US soil. Now, if the United States can bomb its own people, its own citizens, what do you think it will do to other people in the world? Right? So now we're seeing that the United States is lifting and it's taking its citizens away from Haiti. And Canada is also doing the same thing, and maybe other countries. Now, because the Dominican Republic is doing the same. I read something in their newspapers recently that the Dominican government is also evacuating its citizens from Haiti. So people are doing that. So is war on the horizon? And will the United States treat Haiti as the situation that happened in Waco, in which they would just be bombed, right? That I do not know, but it's something to think about. Now we're seeing that people are going through famine, and it means therefore that also many lives will be lost. And we might, if you have famine there, you are going to also have drought in terms of people not being able to have access to water. We don't know what's going on. They don't have access to food, then I'm sure that they are also going through lack of water, which is very important. We can only live 3 days, according to the scientists, without water. So we don't know what's going on there in terms of that. Now, the US is encouraging its citizens to leave. It says here in the article, we encourage US citizens still in Haiti who seek to depart to contact the Department of State using the crisis intake form on our website if they have not already done so, the agency said. This is what I found very interesting. People taking the US government coordinated flights must sign a promissory bill agreeing to reimburse the US government. So this is not for free. The people, the US evacuees or the US citizens who would like to be evacuated have to pay for the flights. Now, something I thought about, let us say that there is a person who, a Haitian American who was living in Haiti, living in the United States and decided to transfer to have retired in Haiti. And they have to, they have to leave right now. It means that they have to leave everything that they have ever worked for. They have to uproot their lives, right? And that is something that you have to think about. That today you might be in a situation where you have planned your life to live in one location, and all of a sudden, everything is terminated and is uprooted, and it leaves you there hanging and going back to what? So even though these are US citizens, we have to ask the question, what sort of lives were they living in Haiti, and what impact will that have on the quality of life they're going to live in the United States? And did some of them even have the money to return? But the United States is saying once you're an evacuee and you come on, you use one of these chartered flights, it means therefore that you need to repay the state, that's the US government. So here there's another passenger on Sunday's flight, Marie Lucy St. Fleur, 69 of West Palm Beach, said she felt most at home in Haiti, and it pained her to see what her homeland was enduring. I don't feel well at all, she said. I would like to live in my country, and I can't. So this is what is happening now, that you don't have the freedom to live where you want because of what is happening. And these things can break out in any part of the world at this moment, right? Whether a state in the United States or, because let us say, for example, in the US, that a state should go up against the federal government. This can happen. What happened in Waco was a message sent to US citizens also that if you go up against the government, whether it's a religious cult or it's a religious movement, political movement, economic movement, social movement, you can be put down. You can be bombed, right? Don't challenge the state. And that is what we should do. And maybe I should look at a picture of Waco just to show you what happened and to give you a little, insight into what happened at Waco, right? So let me just look at the internet here and look for the Waco massacre that took place in um in Haiti, right? Not in Haiti, in Texas, I beg your pardon. Yeah, my thoughts are not clear here. Now, look at this, what this is saying here. Just let me see if I can make this bigger. So let me see if I can share my screen with you to look at a picture of what took place in the United States on US soil in 1993 under the Bill Clinton administration, one of your favorite boys, right? Wasn't he? Now, look at what is happening here. And they actually burnt the entire community. So this was the community in which they lived in Waco, Texas, and this was their property. And the United States, you know, decided to do what it did here. And people died. Lots of people died. It was how many people died? Let us look at what the paper here is saying. It's not a paper, it's the Britannica, right? The Britannica is saying here that, yeah, this is Britannica, that Waco siege, a 51-day standoff between Branch Davidians, that's what they were called, and federal agents that ended on April 19th, 1993, when the religious group's compound near Waco, Texas, was destroyed in a fire. Nearly 80 people were killed, right? And what happened here in Waco, Texas? So this is no conspiracy theory, as some of you might want to assert, right? Because everything in your little minds, in your little narrow minds, right, is conspiracy, because you don't want to think and you're afraid that if you grasp the reality of what the government is about, that everything in your life will collapse, right? You're so afraid, you're so fearful that you don't want to understand, you do not want to confront reality. You do not want to come to grips with what can happen, right? And what your governments are capable of doing to you, right? And that's why many of you cry conspiracy. But this is no conspiracy. This is what happened here in Waco, Texas was something real. In fact, I met someone in Maryland some years ago. She was a part of a prayer group that I was attending, or I used to attend, and she told me that she was a part of that movement. I can't remember how the conversation came about, and we were talking about Waco, Texas, and she told me that it happened, and we might have been talking about U.S. imperialism and the mark of the beast and the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, and she spoke briefly about her experience. I did not get any time to really develop the topic with her and really the details in terms of the details that happened and what was her experience. But she was actually a citizen from Grenada, and she was a naturalized citizen in the United States, and she told me that she was a part of that Davidian group. So these are real people. I'm not sure if she was present on the property. Maybe she wasn't at the time. And I think she was giving God thanks that she wasn't present, because if she had been present, she would have also lost her life. When the United States also went to Jamaica in 2010 and what happened in West Kingston, that was the first thought that came to mind. I said, my God, this is another Waco moment, right? This is another Waco, Texas moment. Remember now that these people in West Kingston wanted the United States to back off in terms of not extraditing their drug kingpin. They thought that the drug kingpin was someone who was, charitable to them and helped them and was their beneficiary. And they did not want the United States to extradite him, to take him from Jamaica to the United States. And so what they did, they sort of organized a protest action, and they challenged the Jamaican state and the United States and said that, we are not going to let him, we're not going to allow you to take our guy. We're not going to allow you to take our, our daddy. That means because, he was the one who was looking after them, right? Because Jamaica is a paternalistic state in which, because the state has not really performed the role that it should play in the lives of these people, they thought that this drug kingpin, Christopher Douglas Coke, was the one who took care of them, and he had assumed the responsibility of what the state should be doing. Incidentally, when we talk about Jamaica, it's something very interesting, because I was reading one of the cables, the WikiLeaks cables last night, and it suggested, and these were conversations that were happening at the US Embassy in Jamaica about the political situation in Jamaica. For those of you who don't know WikiLeaks, and these are cables, of US, what should I say now, thoughts about different countries, right? And these are mostly secret conversations that you and I are not privy to. But, the Julian Assange, that was his crime, the crime that he had committed, that he released a lot of these cables online, and people were able to read some of the secret communications and secret cables that were sent from the embassies around the world to the US State Department. So I think I now lost my train of thought. So what the cable suggested is that, one of these cables, the WikiLeaks cables, is that the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, he would not and could not have become MP of West Kingston without Christopher Douglas, the drug kingpin. Without his permission, he could not have become Prime Minister of, and the Member of Parliament of West Kingston, not Prime Minister, but Member of Parliament of West Kingston. He couldn't have Tivoli Gardens in West Kingston. He wouldn't. A drug kingpin had to have given him that stamp of approval. Now, when you have that going on in a state, it means, therefore, that the government has lost entire control. And the Jamaican government had lost, and perhaps still continues to lose, control over these, what you want to call them, political fiefdoms, right? I think that is what it is, right? So this guy was taking care of the people, and they challenged the Jamaican state and the US state that they would not have released him, and there was no way that they were going to give up to this. They were going to fight to their death. Of course, the United States cornered them, and the Jamaican state also, and killed 70 of them. 70 lives were lost as a result of that incursion, of that US and Jamaica joint military operation. And when I saw that happened in Kingston, even though that wasn't it wasn't a religious group, even though the way in which these guys are so tethered and so, attached to these political dons in Jamaica and other parts of the world, to these political gangs, as I should say, it's the same. It's like it gives you a religious flavor. It's a sort of religious cult, if you will. And that is what happened in Kingston, Jamaica in 2010, right? That was a Waco moment, and the people were killed. The people were killed with the complicity of the Jamaican state, right? And Jamaica is sending its army into Haiti. And what lesson can Jamaica teach Haiti about violence when we are more violent? Jamaicans are far more violent than the Haitians are, right? What is happening in Haiti right now is controlled violence, and you should know that, right? And when you're standing up, slavery was violent because the slaves had to stand up for their rights. And most of the times when they had the slave rebellions, they were violent because slavery was a violent institution, and violence begets violence, right? But sometimes we think that Oh, the slaves were the violent ones because we have been brainwashed, right? The slave masters were the violent ones. And right now, the imperialists who are representatives of the slave masters, of the plantocracy, they are the violent ones. They are the violent instigators, the instigators of violence, right? And this is what we have to understand. Got to grasp these concepts. But oftentimes, when we think about violence, we think about the ordinary man, right? The lumpen proletariat, as you would say. And we don't think about the bourgeoisie, right? Because they're too sophisticated. They're Harvard trained and they went to the University of the West Indies. How can they be so crude and crass, right? But yeah, because when you get an education, the human heart is not changed by an education, right? So you can pretend as if you are sophisticated, but in your heart, in the deep recesses of your heart, you are a monster, a dragon, right? So that is what we need to bear in mind. So I think Haiti might be going through a Waco or is about to experience a Waco moment, a Waco situation in which I think that if the um the gangs, the so-called gangs in Haiti, led by Cherizier, if he does not decide or if he does not come to an agreement with the US and the core group and the United Nations, these authorities, these reigning imperialists, I think that there is going to be just a wide-scale massacre of the people, right? I think that is what is going to happen. I fear it, and I lament that it's going to happen in the Caribbean region, and it's going to set the trend. If that happens, that is going to ultimately set the trend for what happens in the entire world, including the United States. Because what it suggests here is that if we protest, if the US government or any authority, whether Jamaican authority, Trinidadian authority, Barbadian authority, if they say something to citizens and we decide that, no, we're not going with it, and we protest, then they can just, bomb you, right? They can just instigate a massacre and just have that cleaning of that protest matter finished, right? And that is how they're going to deal with these matters, these issues of protest and challenging the state, even though the state might be wrong. Because we're now here not saying on this channel that, the government shouldn't have authority and should not be able to wield some amount of authority over citizens. However, what we're suggesting here is that when we're not getting the truth, right? And we see where people are standing up for their rights, for their human rights, according to what they use in the United Nations. Isn't it interesting how the United Nations like to talk about human rights and violations thereof and all of this stuff? At the end of the day, it does also participate in the abuse or the abuses of human rights. Isn't that amazing? Right? That the hypocrisy of the human race, even though they like to talk about these things, they don't mean anything. I remind you, for example, of Andrew Johnson. And Andrew Johnson was um, the president that succeeded Abraham Lincoln when, after he was assassinated. And Andrew Jackson throughout Johnson, not Jackson, but Johnson, Andrew Johnson, because Andrew Jackson was a different president. So Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Abraham Lincoln after the assassination of the same, he pretended right throughout the Civil War, the American Civil War, that is, that he was pro African Americans and against slavery. Throughout that, he was this guy and he was with the North, even though he was a Southerner. right? But he pretended as if he was siding with the North. Well, yes, he was siding with the North, but do you know why he was siding with the North? Because the ways in which the Southerners treated him, because the Southerners behaved like the British, they modeled their hierarchy, their hierarchical structure after the British. So you had, like you have in Jamaica, this sort of rigid hierarchy of authority. And as far as Andrew Johnson was concerned, then he wasn't born into wealth and prestige. He wasn't that typical Southerner who was born. Not many of them were born into wealth and prestige. Very few, and he wasn't one of those lucky guys, right? So they treated him very poorly, even though he was also a slave owner, right? But he was not one of them who, you know, formed that elite circle. So they treated him like a little boy, right? So he didn't like it. And he had a lot of bad experiences with these elite Southerners. So when he saw now that the system was coming down, he wanted these guys to suffer. He wanted to wield his power over them and to say, yeah, this is my time now to suffocate you and to inflict those harms that you inflicted upon me, whether they're emotional or verbal harms, I don't know, whatever they did to him back in his days. However, when he realized now that he had become, I think he was vice president and then he became president, that's Andrew Johnson, then he decided that, okay, now that I'm president, I can wield my power over them, so I can forgive them. I can forgive the Southerners. And he was one of the persons behind the scenes who went and forgave the Southern planters for what they had done. Essentially, he just said, okay, now that I'm president of the United States, and you are underneath me, you are now my subjects, right? And I'm the reigning monarch, then guess what? I'll forgive you. Do you see how quickly humans can change? And then he decided that, you know, slavery wasn't all that bad, right? And he was a part of the whole system of the Jim Crow laws. And yeah, he was very, very much involved in that. A guy who, during the Civil War, pretended while Abraham Lincoln was alive that he was with freedom and he wanted freedom and he would die for freedom. At the end of the day, when he got the power, the office that he was always craving for, and the power that came with that office, he decided that he was not what he had purported himself to be, right? So this is what we have to understand. Not because somebody says something nice and they use elegant language, it means therefore that they are the people that they are saying that they are, right? And the United Nations is not what we think it is. It's not a peacekeeping movement or organization. And we've got to understand that, right? Haiti should be now the country that should have unpacked that to us. If there should be other countries like, what happened in Iraq, what happened in other Afghanistan, and all others of these countries. But since we are here and the Caribbean is the backyard, as the US likes to say, of the United States, then you should know now that the United Nations is not a peacekeeping organization. Its major thrust is war. And then it behind the scenes, well, I shouldn't say behind the scenes, it gives you this veneer that it is there to maintain peace and order, but it is not, that is not its major thrust. Behind the scenes, it is actually instigating wars, right? And this is what you have to understand. But I thought I would come and share with you this morning the whole nature of what is happening in Haiti, and that the US is actually, and Canada are taking people or evacuating people from the country. I understand also that there are what should I say now? Um, children who have gone, what do you call these children again? The word has eluded me right now. But these children without parents, what we call them again, they are actually in Jamaica. Some of them have landed in Jamaica, I understand, and other World Bank employees are actually in Jamaica as we speak. The former, well, World Bank employees who used to work in Haiti. So they have been relocated. So yeah, that is what it is all about. And we've got to really get our acts together and understand that what is going to happen in Haiti is going to be the standard of what is going to happen, how the authorities, how the globalists will wield their influence upon us. Let me just see if there is anything coming from the Jamaica Gleaner today. I'm not sure if they have anything to say to us about that situation. Normally, there's no analysis coming from Jamaica in terms of Haiti, which I find to be rather interesting and also concerning, because normally we used to have in the Gleaner, more so in the Jamaica Observer, especially when John Maxwell was alive, excellent reporting on Haiti, and analyses also were given. But in recent times, the Gleaner is actually on the side of the US. Well, there's nothing on the side here, so I don't know what's going on with them. The Gleaner, publishes when they feel like, so they don't have a set time for publication. Sometimes I find that to be interesting. Yet they like to talk about productivity in Jamaica, and they are perhaps the least productive in terms of giving the news, giving a nuanced perspective of the news that they used to do, but they no longer do. Now, we've got now to inform ourselves as much as we can. Thank you, subscribers, those who have been subscribing. I want to thank you. We've got to move it up now. We've got to ratchet up our or subscribing or subscription. And also to like the videos that I'm saying to you, like up the videos. Make sure that you like the videos so the videos can be shared with other people on this platform. What I'm talking about, I'm sure, is not something that the authorities and the powers that be are happy with, because they like us to be, in lockstep, right? Walking in lockstep with what they are doing. And they don't like people who think and who think outside the box and just read the headline stories and the opinion pieces from these daily newspapers. And you just say, oh, yeah, that's it. And you don't think outside the box. You don't try to ask the hard questions, because I'm sure many of you would not have connected what happened in Waco, Texas, with what is possible, what could be a possibility in Haiti. You're not thinking about that. You're just thinking that the United States is going to go down there and clean up the mess, and things, every little thing is going to be all right. Baby, don't worry about a thing, because every little thing gonna be all right. And you sing and you dance and you think that everything is going to be all right, when we have lots of people being massacred and starving, right, in that Caribbean country. So I, solicit your prayers for Haiti, and also we hope that we can only pray and ask the Lord that he will intervene. Well, he always intervenes, but that he will have mercy. He will show mercy on that country. But we must understand also that God cannot help those who reject him, right? We are in a battle, we are in spiritual warfare, and he can only help those who are trying to get closer to him, and not those who have rejected him, right? And I have been pleading with the Haitians that, yes, you think that this voodoo thing is African and all of that nonsense, but you've got to understand, well, it's a hybrid religion, a merger of the Roman Catholicism, because Roman Catholicism also is African in nature. And so we have to understand that it's a hybrid. Most of the religions are hybrid, right? As people migrate and they merge together, cultures come together, come in contact with each other, then you form hybrids, right? That is what is happening. Many things that almost everything that we do, we don't live in a pure world, right? The only pure religion is what is found in the Bible, because that is the word of God, and it never changes, because God never changes, right? So that is what you need to understand. But the Haitians need to come to grips with their realities and As I said to Jamaicans, Rastafarianism has not built any country, right? And Obia and voodooism, or whatever you want to call it, right, has not built any society, any civilized society. But we have, let us look at the founding fathers of the United States. They were not particularly religious, right? I think they were deists or, something of a sort, but they were not particularly religious. And I think one of the reasons why they were not religious was because power, power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So they did not want to be able to, you know, to extricate themselves from power. So they were affiliated, a lot of them, with Freemasonry. And you can't be a Christian and be affiliated with Freemasonry and these secret organizations. You can't, right? The two do not compare, even though people like to tell you that, but that's not true, right? God does not like anything to be done in secret, right? Light must be shed on everything that we do, right? And if you want your special organization that wants to do good in the world, you don't have to form a secret organization to do that, right? Why are you forming a secret organization to do good in the world? Doesn't make any sense. So these founding fathers, even though they were not particularly religious, as we would say, but they understood the value of the Christian faith, of the Protestant Christian faith, and they adhered to it. And the Constitution came from the Bible and the principles outlined therein, right? So we have to attach ourselves to strong institutions. And one of the strong institutions in terms of promoting wholesome values, principles, mores, is the Bible. The Bible is cemented in those principles. And because we're moving away from that, including in the United States, and crying after a new religion, crying after a new God, and even though many people are saying they're atheistic, they're not atheistic, right? Because other things occupy that vacuum that needs to be filled, which the Holy Spirit and God can fill. But also we have demons, if you desire to have demons in your lives. And these demonic forces are destructive, and they want war. So when we're talking about wars will never cease on these world until God destroys these destructive demonic forces that control a lot of the times our politicians and our world leaders, because for them, it's a pleasure, for the devil and his angels, it's a pleasure to see humans slaughtered. It's a pleasure for them. It's a delight, right? Remember now that, during slavery, the slave masters, they would have parties at times, and the slaves who would rebel, they would just have the dogs come and just eat them up, and they would have fun, and they would laugh and drink and celebrate, right? The same thing happened during during the Dark Ages and the French Revolution, and people who were protesting, the ones who would rebel, then they would also be slaughtered. And afterwards, you would have a fiesta, a big party. And guess who would be the ones to do that party? The Roman Catholic priests, right? They would have fun, and the Pope, and they would laugh, and they would celebrate the deaths of people because they did not agree with the teachings and the doctrines of the Roman Catholic faith. What a brutal history human beings have suffered, right? We have suffered and we have experienced a very, very brutal history, because the human heart, above all things, is evil, right? And is desperately wicked, right? This human heart here, even as much as it is clothed, right, in clean and elegant clothes, is desperately wicked above all things. And that is why we can't put our trust in any man or woman, as a matter of fact, right? We have to only put our faith and trust in God. No voodoo religion, is going to save Haiti from this crisis at this juncture of their history. And they've got to come to get to grips with that and move away from this, what we call as if, Africa is some magical country that's going to save you. It hasn't saved you yet, and it's not going to save you right now. So we've got to elevate the standard, elevate the conversations, and begin to attach ourselves with progressive institutions and progressive people. Thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.